Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell. Patrick? Patrick?
And I'm Patrick Gonzales.
You were lagging a little bit behind, but we'll go with it, man. We are going to go with it.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. And this is a great commercial, isn't it, Kelly? It's for...
Love it.
Yeah.
It's all technology, Clay.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Okay, let's see what happens. It'll be an adventure, Kelly. This is just an adventure. Our guest today is Kelly Schulz. She was a member of the House of Delegates. She was also under Governor Larry Hogan's Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Commerce, and now she is the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council. Kelly, welcome to the show.
It's great to be back. It's good to see you guys. Happy summertime.
It is. It's a little cooler today here on the shore, but we'll take it. We'll take it.
We'll take a breather for a minute. We know it's coming.
Happy summertime.
That's right. That's right. Being head of the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council, one of the big issues I know is on your plate is the issue of data centers. A lot of people heard about data centers, they've read about data centers, but they actually haven't seen or really know what that is. Could you tell us what that is?
Yeah, of course I will. And first of all, thank you guys both for having me back to the show, talking about
Sure.
tech and tech in general and some of the biggest topics of the day in the industry. I think the reason why the Tech Council is relevant to this conversation is because we actually formed an alliance last year, a data center alliance, because there's so many people that don't understand the world of data centers, what they are not, how they can be useful, really being able to identify some of those facts and the myths that are associated with them. So we created an official data center alliance, the first state in the nation to do so. We're now teaching other states how to do it, bringing subject matter experts, community members, just really teaching and educating people that are out there. And I think that is one of the most important things, Clay. This is why I jumped at this opportunity, because education to the general public that are hearing nothing but kind of the fear part of it, some of the really bad things that people think can happen to it, that rhetoric needs to be quelched, right? We need to be able to look at a way where data centers can fit into our communities in a way that the communities want them to fit into the communities.
What are some of the prime, locations? Are they urban, they rural? Where would these data centers ideally be going?
I like to say I am not site specific, so I'm a little agnostic is where they go. I think one of the great parts of this conversation is that our local jurisdictions, the county commissioners and the county council members, county executives, right, depending on how, the counties are made up in their charters, they have the ability to set limitations, guardrails, regulatory practices for them, which includes placement of them. Right now, before the data center conversation really started in the last, I would say, 2 years, data centers would generally have been allowable usage in light industrial zone properties or general and zone properties in specific areas. What some counties have done, I would say the first of them being Frederick County and Prince George's County, is to look at those zones and to say which of these zones that could already by right allow the data centers to be here, where do we as a local elected body really want them to be? And so they got very creative and they developed zones in which they could be. For example, Frederick County did an overlay zone and said, we as county elected officials, with hearing from the community, we're only going to have at most 1% of our overall land mass dedicated to data centers. Mm-hmm. And so they did that map. They found a place that was a brownfield that had no other usage for it. You could not do residential, difficult to farm there. And that is where that activity is happening in Frederick County. And that's really the only place in Frederick County that it can happen because it is at about the 1% of the land mass. Right. And other jurisdictions can look at their industrial parks. They can look at areas that may have different types of zoning, and getting feedback from the community is super important. But That's not for us as the Data Center Alliance to, kind of dictate where they should go. Each county has a different place where it may make sense for them to have those guardrails there.
That's interesting that you said, the brownfields, they've been around, industrial revolution on that they just are useless pieces of land unless something like a data center can go there. Are there other sites like that outside Frederick County that you know of where brownfields are and can exist?
There are. I won't list all of them. There are certainly many projects that are happening. Hi, Patrick.
Hello. Can you hear? I can hear you perfectly.
Oh my
Can you
gosh.
hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I can see you. I can hear you. It's fabulous.
Perfect. Now
Welcome
we can
back.
have a conversation.
So, Patrick, I was saying there's many, many places around the state and in specific counties where those local elected officials will have the opportunity to look to see where it makes sense for them to be. We stay out of that, right? Our job is to educate people on what data centers actually do. So, we're all kind of the same generation. I'm looking at all of us on the screen here, right? And do you all remember walking into our office building du jour, whatever that may have been? And you
Right.
walked in, and there was always at the end of the hallway, there was this like strange door that led to something, but nobody really knew what it was.
Right.
It was the server room. It was that office building's data center,
Yep.
right? And so that was, throughout the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and then in the 2000s, early 2000s, people started saying, why don't we consolidate and make better use of our space, make better use of our energy? Why did each of these office buildings have to be cooling and managing these internal data centers? So that's when they went to the cloud. And we know, like, they didn't go into a cloud, right?
Right.
They went
right.
into a managed center, a data center, where this information was being stored in order to be able to create efficiencies within the office buildings in different types of industry sectors. And so that was the creation of the data centers. And it happened right around us, right around Maryland. It happened in Loudoun County because that's where, in the beginning, AOL planted all of their fiber in Loudoun County, right there.
Right.
And that was where the internet kind of spoked out and went into different places. That's why Loudoun County now has the greatest density of data centers of any place in the world. So Maryland is geographically close to the data centers, which allows for that connectivity, the fiber, to be able to connect it to different parts of the state and different parts of the country. That's where we are.
Patrick, do you have a question or comment?
Well, the number one thing is Kelly described as we've evolved over the last 30, 40, 50 years. In the 70s, we had data centers, like Kelly said. They were at the end of the hall in that room, and it's just evolved to a point. Look, AI is a reality. It is like in 1905, the United States government saying, nah, we're not going to get involved in this airplane thing. Or we're not going to get involved in this thing that they're trying to create to replace the horse and buggy. And that's insane. That is the way the world is moving. We've got to deal with it. And as Kelly talked about Loudoun County, my daughter lives there, so I'm somewhat familiar with it. And I think the issues, the problems with data centers are problems that are easily solved. One of them is attractiveness. People say, well, they're not very attractive. Okay, well, we can make them attractive, can't we, Kelly?
They are being made more attractive, yes.
So, okay. And other thing, I did something fairly recently in a county in Maryland. It's evolving, but still basically a rural area. And the number one issue was preserving rural farmland in this county. And I asked myself, would it be worth investing 100 acres of rural farmland to put a data center in order to preserve 100,000 acres? And to me, the answer seems, yeah, that seems like a logical way of doing something. So,
well, Patrick, I don't know if we're talking about the same county, but I will say that, Patrick, we talked about the county councils, the county commissioners, local elected officials being able to create a pathway for data centers to exist in their localities. In Frederick County, part of the new standards for the data center zoning and the text amendments says that for every acre that data centers take up in the county, they have to purchase 5 acres for ag preservation. So for every acre, there will be ag preservation in the county. And so less than 1%, but I mean, that's really significant. And in that same jurisdiction in 2025, when the state of Maryland did not have funding for ag preservation to any of the counties, Frederick County was able to put over $2 million, $12 million, I think it was, into ag preservation because of the recordation taxes, because of the purchase of the property from the data center development that went into ag preservation, because that's how it was allocated in Frederick County with recordation taxes. So those counties that want to remain rural, that want to be able to have a little bit of both, right? Let's take some of the tax-based pressure off of residential. Let's keep it agriculture, but also let's introduce a commercial base into our jurisdiction. There is a way to do that. And I just wish all elected officials across the state would realize that they do have the power in order to be able to make that happen, to bring some of that tax revenue to their jurisdictions without a lot of interruption into the rest of the county.
Absolutely. And they do have the power, and you have to have the will, and you have to have the understanding. I mean, the other thing about data centers, and I don't pretend to be an expert on this, is they say they come in and you build, I'm just making these, 100,000 square foot facility. And it employs 15 people. It's okay, well, this is the way I look at it. That 100,000 square foot facility is generating a whole lot of revenue for the local government. But it's not, we don't got 300,000 people moving in to work there that puts a burden on the public school system, on the public safety system, blah, blah, blah. So, there's economic development of many kinds. To me, data centers are a form of economic development that benefit the jurisdiction with where it's in a way that others don't, because it brings huge amounts of revenue and doesn't put a onerous burden on
the county resources. 100%, right? I mean, so people talk about different types of uses that could go onto this zoned properties in industrial zoned areas. So let's just take an example, right? An average 800,000 square foot data center, right? Sage Policy Group did several, and it's on our website, actually, mdtechcouncil.com. People can go and find all of these resources. Everything I say will be cited on our website, so I'm not like speaking just out of thin air. But an average 800,000 square foot data center will bring significant resources to every community in which they locate, right? And part of that is the jobs. I mean, there is estimated to be 500 jobs at a data center, at that average 800,000 square foot data center, both indirect and direct jobs. And some of our best partners, and we talk about jobs in a couple of different categories. We talk about during construction jobs, and we talk about post-construction jobs. Our friends at the IBEW, let's just say, our trades, just one of the trades, right? 2 years ago, they had 2,000 people in their apprenticeship program. You know how this is important to me, Clay, right? Today, they
absolutely.
They have 3,200 men and women in their apprenticeship program today in order to be able to satisfy the needs. Now, a lot of those local folks have been driving down the road or up the road, either to Virginia or Pennsylvania, in order to be able to build their data centers. Our job is to keep our local workers here so that they can live in the community and work in the community and have that job creation. And what really irritates them, and it really irritates me, when the opponents talk about these as temporary jobs. These are not temporary jobs.
Yeah.
These are ongoing jobs. Data centers take years to build. But when you think about the trades, every job that they go on is technically a temporary job. It's the profession that they chose, right? But they're getting paid a lot of money to be able to work in the community in which they live and to be able to belong to the local in which they lived. And then post construction, we still need the straight trades, maybe not in as high numbers as construction, but we still need electricians. We still need the steam fitters. We still need the carpenters. We still need everybody that's there, roofers, everybody that's going to be able to make sure that this is ongoing. Different jobs than an Amazon warehouse, right? Distribution facility.
Right.
Right.
But
Kelly,
I would say important.
Kelly, every poll I've done the last 40 years was a temporary job.
I love that, Patrick. I mean, this is what I say to everyone. I was involved in politics. My job was temporary. Every 4 years, I had to go, reapply for my job, right? So this is more long term than that was, really, right? It's a good point, Patrick.
Kelly, two things I hear about and I've read about are problems with these data centers take a lot of electricity. And if they take a lot of electricity, ratepayers and households and other businesses are going to have their bills skyrocket. The other thing I keep hearing about is it takes a lot of groundwater, the groundwater resources to, I guess, cool these systems. What's your view of that? What do we need to do to address those issues?
Yeah, so we'll take the electricity issue first because that is a really important issue. And I'll just start this conversation out by saying we need more energy. We needed more energy before we ever started talking about data centers, right? And for every single one of my neighbors, my friends, everybody around the state that tells me that they're really upset at data centers because they're increasing their energy bill right now, today, or last year, or the year before, I'll say there are no new data centers on the grid. So data centers are not the problem today, right, in Maryland, because nothing has been plugged in yet. There's just the theory of data centers happening in some areas. But I will also say for in the future, there's been some things that the legislature has done. A couple of things. Last year, they passed the Next Gen Act, which mandates now statutorily that data centers pay an additional fee, let's just say for layman's terms, a different rate in order to be able to get that supply of energy to them. So they were already paying a higher rate as being a commercial customer because they were a commercial customer. And they were already paying an additional tax in Maryland because commercial businesses pay an additional tax on top of paying a higher rate. So they're already doing that, but it's going to be different for a high load user is what they say, right? So that's going to be taken care of as far as the amount of cost. And then this past year, the Utility Relief Act went a couple of steps further, right? Talking about the need to explore, bring your own generation, talking about different ways to create energy that's on site, making sure that data centers are paying the price for the upgrades and the infrastructure. Now, you will see on my website that there are many studies that talk about data centers actually reducing the rates for residential customers. Those are studies that have been done across the country. In Virginia, they pay 10% less than what we pay in Maryland for energy. And they've got, multiple times more data centers than we have. It's because the data centers pay for the infrastructure rebuild. Right. So when your infrastructure is bad, your utility company is going to come and say, in order to continue to transmit this energy to you, we have to update the lines. We have to do something in order to be able to bring it out of antiquity to make energy more productive. Data centers have to do that. Data centers have to pay for that. And that takes the cost away from the ratepayers, where the ratepayers aren't paying for that infrastructure and transmission rebuild, but paying just for the transmission of their energy alone. And I think those are really important contexts to think about the energy process of it. Water. You want me to go to water?
Okay. Yes.
So I'll just do water real quick, right? So everybody thinks that
Sure.
the water that is going to be used in order to cool the data centers, right? Because just like in our old office buildings, you know that they had to have extra air conditioning in there because the servers worked really hard to keep up, and it got warm in there. So that was the coldest room in the building. Water is being used most frequently now in new innovative data centers in a closed loop system. That means they're borrowing water from, let's say, a water treatment facility in the local jurisdiction. They're running the cold water through the system to cool, and then that water is going back to the water treatment system. So it's not being used up, it's being borrowed for the most part. And then I will also say about cooling, some people are using air cooling, right? That's different. And you don't have to cool the servers 365 days a year, because we do know that where we live, there's not a lot of cooling that needs to happen in January, February, March, right? So those are just different types of scenarios. Most of the time, and again, this is something that county officials can dictate in their guardrails and their zoning requirements and their permitting requirements. The water that they utilize does not come from the aquifer. They can find other ways in order to do that. Depends on the county.
The last thing I hear about is, boy, these data centers go in and there's this uneasy hum, like a noise pollution. I don't know if that's myth or reality. I've never been near a data center. Do you hear that concern?
You know, I've heard that concern from people in areas that don't live next to a data center, because they've heard that concern from other people that don't live next to a data center.
Gotcha.
I think it's one of those things that's out there. Could it be that if you're in a very heavily dense part of, say, Loudoun County, there is a humming and a noise that comes from that? Perhaps. Are you going to hear that hum and that noise in a rural part of the state, or would it be any different than in another industrial use that's being done on a local industrial zone site? Maybe, maybe not. But again, what local jurisdictions can do, right? So there's noise ordinances everywhere, right? They're already in existence.
Right.
And what counties have done and what additional counties can do is put specific regulations in about the noise, right? So if you have this construction in this area, you need to create a certain amount of berms, noise berms. You need to have evergreen shrubs and trees so that in the wintertime, it's not an additional hum, right? And there are real new technological ways in order to be able to really minimize the effect that the noise would have. We talk a lot about the decibels, right? The decibels is low. The decibels of a data center is about the type of conversation that we're happening now. And that means that was how it would appear at the property line. That's how you would hear it at the property line. People's complaint is that it's consistent. It doesn't go away. So I think creating those barriers is what you can do. There's also new techniques that developers are using to put some of that additional energy generation, blocking it in concrete walls, putting it on different sides of the construction and the development areas. I think there's a lot of ways in order to be able to mitigate what people think is a risk for them.
Well, Kelly, I'm looking at the clock on the wall. Oh, I think it's time we have to wind the show down.
We have to wind it down, but I have to get my best talking point in, Clay, because this is not just about
okay. You go for it. You go for it.
This is not just about data centers. This is about energy in general, right? We live in Maryland. We are a technology trove for lots of different types of industries. Energy has got to be our focus. And we in Maryland have to stop focusing on one type of energy. We have to start looking at every type of energy consumption and generation that we can. We cannot be afraid of natural gas. We cannot be afraid of nuclear. We cannot be afraid of battery storage. We cannot be afraid of renewables, right? All of that has to be a part of what we do in order to be able to make Maryland really the dynamic technology state that we can be. Because without that energy source, it's not just data centers that can't come here, right? I represent biomanufacturing plants, right? We represent all of these different technologies that are here in Maryland that want to grow and thrive. None of it can be done without additional energy generation. And so this is my plea to all of your listeners. Let's talk about energy. Let's talk about all of the above energy. Let's just talk about generating energy so that we can move into the future.
Amen, sister. That is hallelujah. Now that is it. That is it. In a nutshell.
That's it. That's it. I love it. Clay, that's my last word.
You're singing our song. You're singing our song. Well, the clock on the wall says it's time we have to wind things down, Kelly. Thank you for joining us. This was a lot of fun. We want to have you back on again, but I'm afraid it's time to say goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick. Kelly, it was so much fun. We'll have you back on again soon, and look forward to talking again.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.